On this week's video I made a lot of different sketches for 6 of my characters for the show. And you get to decide which ones are gonna be the final ones. So let's get right into it. From this week onward, I think the format's gonna change a lot for these videos. It's gonna be a lot of time lapses, as you can see. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the character you're looking at. She's going to be a medium, someone who can speak with the dead. But the way her power works is that she gets possessed by the ghost that you want to contact through her. So for that reason, I want her to look kind of crazy. And also the main shapes I'm using for her are circles. Because of her personality, it makes more sense for her to have more circles in her design. And I'm also trying to avoid as much as I can to have spikes or triangles. I can use the squares to some extent, but the circles need to be the main shape that you see in her. She lives in an alternate universe in either the USA or the United Kingdom, I'm not sure yet. Her objective in the show is going to be to try to change how their mediumship works or try to get rid of it. And right now you're looking at 24 different designs I have for her. I want her to be very small relative to the other characters, so she's basically 2 or 3 heads tall. If there's one design you like, please leave it down in the comments. And now we're gonna move on to her head designs. For this one I was trying a lot of different hairstyles inspired on this 19th century fashion I found online. I'm still not sure if I want to add accessories to her. I was thinking maybe some earrings or something like that. For her face I wanted to capture this sort of being crazy vibe, and I think the eyes are gonna be one of the ways in which I can achieve that. One thing I was struggling a lot with was making her look feminine, but there are some sketches I think turn out pretty well in that department. I want the hair to be a big part of her silhouette. That's why it's so big relative to her body, especially that's visible when we were doing the body proportions. And that's for sure something I want to keep. Finally, these are the 22 options I currently have for sort of how her face might look. I have a couple that I really like, but I would love to know which ones you like. Now we're gonna move on to the character I struggled with the most during this week, and that's the cat. The main shape the cat's going to have is a square, and ideally we won't have any circles on him. And that made it very challenging for me, especially since I don't really like drawing cats, but it kind of makes sense for him to be a cat for this story, so please remember that these are just sketches and the final design is gonna be a lot more appealing. This cat is basically middle-aged and he's supposed to be boring. He lives in a modern city world, in a modern time alternate universe, and he basically cares about nothing. And one of the objectives I want him to have probably is not going to be like very on the surface, but I want him to find something that really makes him tickle. But the thing is that his personality makes it so that he only wants that to happen magically. He wants nothing to do with the process of getting there. In the end, there are like 4 or 5 different cat designs that I'm really proud of. The rest are kind of meh. But if there's one of these 20 that you like, please leave it down in the comments. And we're moving on to the part that I actually enjoyed about the cat, which are the heads. As you can see, at first I was struggling a bit with making him look like a cat, like especially the first one of the second row. I think that one looks more like a dog than anything. But towards the end I was trying a different type of proportion for the cat, and I really like how most of those designs turn out. Once again, we have 27 different designs. You're probably getting tired of hearing this, but you can leave your vote down in the comments. This is probably the last time I'm gonna say that in the video. Just remember, for any character, just leave their name, their species, or however we can identify them, and the numbers you like. It can be more than 1. Now we're gonna move on to a different day in which I'm designing an oracle type character. At first I was really inspired by the Futurama floating heads that are in water from presidents and famous people, but while I was exploring some of the references I came across a fish, and I thought that could work really well for the type of character I want to have, so the rest of the designs are basically inspired by that. This character is gonna be an oracle, and I'm still figuring out how I want their powers to work, but the idea I currently have is that they can sort of predict when, how, who is going to die, but they can only disclose one of those 3 to any other person. And if they disclose more than one of those things, bad things start happening. So these were the 19 different designs I was able to come up with, and throughout the process I realized I kind of knew what type of fish I wanted them to be. There's this video that went very viral recently of one of these anglerfish floating very close to the surface. And I think partially that, and that I really like the lantern this species has on their head, that inspired most of the later designs you're gonna be seeing. I also try to play a lot with this sort of ticking clock I want to have, like I want it to be an hourglass. I thought about including it in this sort of lantern I have, but I'm not sure if I want it to be there. I also thought that could be an eye or multiple eyes for the fish, and I really like that idea. Finally, these are the 27 designs I got for the fish. Remember, this is an oracle, number 3 is important for them, so keep that in mind. Next one, we have a robot. This is gonna be a giant robot, the tallest of the whole lineup of characters I have planned for the show. And since I want them to be friendly, the circle's gonna be the main shape I adopt for them. For the same reason I want to avoid using triangles and spikes, this robot comes from a world in which there are basically very few humans and organic life in general, and they've been revived a lot of different times. Most of those times against their will. What they really want in the story is a say on when or if to be revived, or even to be able to die. They might also want to be free from their programming. The reason for this is because they've been forced to do stuff they regret. They are tired of it and they just want to be free. These are the 17 different sketches I was able to come up with. I have like 3 that are my favorite. One of those is number 1, others number 13. If you have different favorites, you know what to do. Moving on to the head shapes, as you can probably see, I'm not sure how evident it is, I started using a different exercise, which is basically using letters of the alphabet or numbers as symbols to serve, get inspiration from, and try to emulate with the shapes you're creating. If you see the first row, there's a clear A, a V, and it starts getting a bit lost on the C and D. But this is a great exercise in my opinion to start just coming up with more interesting shapes and proportions. This trick and many others I've been using throughout this whole thing. And let me know if you want to know more about this. I've been thinking about making tutorials specific on some of this stuff, like not just showing the process of me making a show, but also starting to make tutorials on specific topics. So if you're interested, just please let me know. I'd happily start doing that. This is one of the most filled pages. I have 28 different designs for the head of the robot. I definitely have like 4 favorites, and I might go for one of those for the final design. Moving on to the next character, this one's a ghost, and his story is gonna be deeply related to his wife. Basically, in the world in which he lives, there's something that you do that turns you into a ghost when you die. I'm still not sure how I want to do that, but my current idea is that if you kill someone while you were alive, when you die you become a ghost. So with that idea, I thought that maybe his wife was killed by someone, he took revenge on that person by killing them, and that's why he turned into a ghost. But since his wife never killed anyone, she didn't become a ghost. So his objective is gonna be to try to make his wife into a ghost so they can live together as ghosts, or simply to move on and go to his wife in a different way. For this one, the main shape I want to have is sort of a triangle laying on its base, because an upside down triangle sort of has this instability thing, and I don't want him to be an unstable character. I've exaggerated a lot how wide he is at the base versus how thin he is at the top. I found that men used to wear a lot of different hats, and also facial hair was a very big deal. And the way he's dressed, basically it's gonna be a suit. I still don't know how much I want it to be incorporated into their body, like since they are a ghost, I can make it so that the clothes are also ghostly, or that it's a ghost that's wearing like regular clothes. And these are my 25 different sketches. Not my best work, I'd say, but I can definitely grab stuff from here and there, combine stuff, and polish some other things to come up with a great final design for this one. Then for heads, I started experimenting with more ghostly types of faces. There's even one that looks kind of like a devil. I also tried to incorporate some of these 1930s, 40s elements like the hat or the hairstyles, especially for these last ones to sort of adapt them into being part of their shape as a ghost. Again, these are the 23 different designs I was able to come up with. Some are kind of weird, but I really like how most of this turned out. And now we've arrived to the final design of this week's video, which is basically an immortal being that is so old that he's going to need technology to remain alive. I didn't add that aspect into all of these designs because I'm gonna be doing that later, but I just wanted to experiment with making him look old and making him look friendly as well. For his shapes, he's gonna be mainly a square, and we need to avoid triangles as much as we can. What they're trying to do in my story is that they kind of want to die because they're tired of existing for such a long time. I was also thinking that maybe during the story is the first time that they come across the concept of death. In his world, like it's everyone's immortal, so that's all he knew. And I was also thinking that in his world, probably what's gonna happen is what Thanos said that happened with Titan in Infinity War, which is basically they ran out of resources. I think that would make a lot of sense, especially for a species that would live for such a long time. Like they would probably already have moved to a different planet and maybe even run out of resources resources there, I was able to come up with 21 different designs. The ones I liked the most were the ones with the huge glasses, and that went into the faces a lot, as you're about to see. I really like the idea of the glasses, either round or square, to be a huge part of this character's silhouette, either just in their head or in the character as a whole. I also started experimenting with different separations between their eyes, because that's one of the ways that you can make a character feel more or less intelligent than others. Basically, the bigger the space between the eyes, the more intelligent they're gonna look, because the space between the eyes is usually where the brain goes in most species and stuff. And in the end, these were the 26 different designs I was able to come up with for him. I really like number 2, I think. The very close together eyes are gonna be the way I wanna go with this character. But if you disagree with me, let me know down in the comments. Please remember you can catch me live on Twitch. I basically stream at least 4 days a week. And if you wanna see further progress, you can follow me on my different social media that's linked down in the description. I'm gonna leave you with myself from the past to tell you what we're gonna be doing next week, and I hope to see you in the next video. This was everything for week number 3. I really appreciate everyone who joined on the streams, and we were able to make a lot of progress with the designs. Next week we're gonna finally be designing Death, and I'm also gonna try to start coming up with different color palettes for the different characters. So that's gonna be really fun. Let's see how we do next week. I think that's good. How long did that take? 35 fucking minutes!